Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic episode.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and today I'm here to do a response video to another YouTuber, The Critical Drinker. I've done a response video to a video of his before, and quite frankly, I'm not surprised that I need to do another one. This one that I'm responding to was his review of The Little Mermaid. I had done my own review the day before, or the same day, or something. Anyway, I did mine, and then I saw his, and I just had to make a response video because I think he's full of shit, quite frankly. And I just had to make a response video. So he did a review of the movie, he didn't like it, and he shit all over it, which is not a surprise. But the thing is, number one, that most of his criticisms were based on the fact that it's different from the animated film from 1989. It's not done exactly the same way as the film from 1989, the animated classic. And at each point that it deviated from that, whether it was a visual effect or a story point, which there's really only one story point that differs, or a musical number, his argument was that makes the new one bad. Well, stop comparing it to the original. I told you the same thing about Peter Pan. It's never going to hold up to the original. And all you're doing when you compare it to the original is setting yourself up for disappointment. And you're not being fair to the remake. So evaluate things on their own merits and stop comparing them to their predecessors. And that right there wipes out most of his criticisms of the movie. Now, you can argue that remakes shouldn't be made. Just leave the original alone. Don't remake them, especially if they're going to change them, because you're ruining the original and the remake is going to suck. Just don't do remakes. Well, remakes have been a thing since forever, and they're going to continue to be. And a company like Disney is going to remake things like The Little Mermaid so they can keep their copyright active. Now, in the case of The Little Mermaid, there might not be a copyright because I think this original story is in the public domain. But like a lot of times when you're seeing a remake of something, it's because the company needs to use the rights or they're going to lose their investment when they paid for the license to the rights for a period of time. So remakes are going to happen. And sometimes they're going to be remakes of things that are not in the public domain. And the companies have a good reason to make remakes in those cases. And you got to get used to the fact that remakes are not going to be as good as the original. They're not going to be the same as the original anyway. Because good or bad isn't determined by faithfulness or fidelity to the original. A remake that's not completely faithful to an original can still be good. The trick is to evaluate it on its own merits, which he doesn't do. At least not with Peter Pan and Wendy, and not with The Little Mermaid. So that was the first thing I would say to him. Secondly, Halle Bailey did in fact do a fine job of acting. To suggest that she didn't is ridiculous. She was playing a fantasy character, an innocent, naive, hard on her sleeve character. Basically a little girl with a crush. It's a caricature of real life. It's not, this isn't Sophie's Choice. So because the acting wasn't Meryl Streep, right? Because it wasn't that deep or that Oscar worthy, doesn't mean it was bad acting. So stop it. The third thing I would say to him is, people of color exist, and sometimes they show up in movies in scenarios that might not comport with real world history, when movies are fantasy pieces with no known setting or particularly defined era that only resembles such. Build a bridge, dude. The sooner the better, because like I said, remakes have been a thing since media's been a thing, and they're going to continue to occur. And when older properties that didn't have brown people in them to begin with because of racism in one form or another, on behalf of an audience that a producer of a particular piece didn't think would support the piece with black people in it, or on behalf of a creator who just didn't want to put black people or people of color in their thing, the companies making these remakes are not going to continue to keep people of color out of them. If they did, half the projects being made these days wouldn't have any roles for people of color, because half of the things being made in Hollywood today are remakes or adaptations of old properties from the late 1800s or early 1900s in the case of Peter Pan, from the 30s in the case of like Batman and Superman, and the 40s and 50s and 60s in the case of some of the Marvel heroes. And, you know, it's 2023, not 1923. Studios are not going to perpetuate the conditions that kept people of color from having meaningful roles that weren't stereotypical in their projects just because that's what happened when the piece that they're adapting or remaking was originally made. They're just not going to do it. The only time people should complain about people of color in a role is when it contradicts actual history in a piece that's supposed to be a telling of things that actually happened. And by the way, people of color get replaced in parts that are supposed to be people of color in movies all the time. It happened with The Hunger Games, it happened with Ghost in the Shell. Decades ago, John Wayne played Genghis Khan in a movie. There was a show about an Asian detective agency on TV in the 50s, and the Asian was played by a white guy. And just ridiculous to now say, oh, well, they should not race swap characters. They have to. The fourth thing I would say to Mr. Critical Drinker is that Awkwafina was, in fact, good. Her character is supposed to be grating and cringy in this version. That doesn't make the movie bad. If that's not how the character was originally, then go back to the first thing I said in this video, which was stop comparing it to the original. Now, to be fair, in my fifth comment to Drinker, I'm going to say that I didn't like the photorealistic crab either. I'm not going to lie. But Daveed Diggs was amazing, full stop, in the part. And that more than makes up for the kind of uncomfortable, photorealistic looking crab. I'll also, to be fair, say that I agree with Drinker that the Eric character was exactly as he said, and so was the actor. Not great. And, you know, because of that, the movie isn't perfect. Oh, no. That doesn't automatically make it awful or a dumpster fire. Saying things like that is just hyperbolic and inaccurate. The other thing I would say to him, the next thing I would say to him is that you shouldn't be butthurt over the fact that the title character kills the villain in this version instead of her suitor. I mean, saints preserve us. All she did was turn the wheel once to steer the ship towards Ursula. And, you know, when you say in your video that she doesn't have any knowledge about ships or anything like that, you're forgetting that earlier in the movie, she learns the concept of steering when she's steering the horse and buggy for a couple of minutes. So your argument there is just ridiculous. There's no reason the title character of a movie can't be the hero just because it was a different character in the original. Again, see number one, stop comparing it to the original. You know, in his video, Drinker says it was too long. Well, it was. Some stuff dragged on that didn't need to drag on. It could have been tighter. Okay. Again, doesn't make it awful. If you want to say it's a 7 out of 10 instead of a 9 or a 10 out of 10, say that. But don't say it's a 1. It's just not true. One of the other things he said is that some of the characters didn't look natural in terms of their movement underwater. Okay. That also does not make the movie awful. It makes it less than perfect. So say it was less than perfect. Don't say it was awful or a dumpster fire or horrible or trash or garbage. And that's really all I have to say. Those are the chief complaints he had about the movie in his video, and I think I've addressed them. And I think I've shown that once again, he was 98% wrong about this movie, just like he was about Peter Pan and probably a bunch of other things, although I can't say that for sure because I haven't watched too many of his videos. But I think I'm going to have to keep an eye on him going forward and watch his videos. So anyway, there you go. That's all I wanted to say. Just, you know, give it up, CD. Okay, I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back with more videos soon. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.